I dream a world, ... And if you want to pick up some of the things that have already been said, and we can just recap them, or you may have thought of some things in the last couple of hours where you want to add to that. So this is your program. This is not church as a whole, as we discovered, as we discussed earlier. But this is your program. I dream a world where what happens in your student music ministry. Maybe I'll write some of these down. Recap? Anything? Anything new? Billy, I really liked yours. You want to say it again?
I don't remember what it said. Creating experiences, both musical and relational and spiritual, that help shape the lives of young people for generations. Something like that.
That was good. That was it. That was the big picture. It was a big, big picture. It's interesting, YouthCUE has had a number of bylines over the years. YouthCUE for directors, for youth choir directors who care. That was the very first one in 1990. Then we evolved a bit, and it was YouthCUE radically impacting the world of youth. And then YouthCUE creating soundtracks for life. And then we kind of fooled around with some other stuff, but the people who have supported our organization over the last 30 years or so really like that, creating a soundtrack for life. They say that really says it for them. And whatever we're talking about is permanent. This is the interesting thing about it, is that so much of what is aimed at students these days is, have you ever noticed how many things aimed at students are advertised as extreme? E-X-T-R-E, extreme, or mega something, or what are some of those other catch words?
Well, there's a VBX down our street where we live. I don't know, I forget the church, but it's no longer VBS, but there's a, and actually I think it's for the youth.
Okay.
So instead of the VBS, which has been grade school or whatever.
Right.
Now they've got VBX.
Yeah. All right.
Who knows what X is?
Yeah. Maybe they don't know. Maybe that's
The X factor.
the unknown factor.
Yeah.
And so much, it seems like, is aimed at getting students in the door, i.e. Pizza Bash, which there's nothing wrong with Pizza Bash. I mean, we all have done that, and we'll do those to attract, but is that all there is? And I believe that we who have had experience with choral music know that there's a lot more that can happen than that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to fight back the sleepy bug this afternoon. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of fading a little bit here. And I think I'm looking like some of you are as well. And so I want to do some pepper drilling here for just a minute. And let me show you kind of what that looks like along the way. This title is Sailing New Seas of Deep Opportunity. And not just skimming the surface, but sailing seas with deep possibilities. You know, when you were a kid and went out and skipped stones over the lake, you ever do that? Still do that sometimes. You find the nice smooth rock and you try to skip it out over the lake. And you know, as long as the velocity keeps up, the thing will keep skipping. It's when the velocity drags down and the speed, it finally hits and just sinks. That's kind of the way it is at 2:30 in the afternoon for us sometimes. But So I want to ask you some more questions. Now, this is your church. This is not Global Church. This is yours. Let's discuss your church's support of their student music ministry. Go. What's it like?
Fantastic.
Okay.
I mean, I could probably walk in the, I mean, money's going to be the issue, but as far as support and belief and faith in what we have to offer, or the possibility, not just what we have, but even growing it into the possibility, it's fantastic.
Okay.
Because I think it's the community that's had its better days, and they recognize that, like what you were saying, they have to change. And so they know they're at they have done a certain amount of reckoning
Right.
to recognize that.
Okay, so let's talk just a minute about, you say, you know, they're supportive and all of that. Is it, I mean, obviously they talk it good, you know?
Yes,
Support within the committee structure of your church?
totally.
So-
And a part of that's happened because we've made it smaller,
Okay,
so it's much more streamlined,
okay,
because there was a little bit of, you know, before, and I've only been there a year now, but that was a good thing to happen, because
Okay.
there were too many cooks,
okay.
or too many, what is it, chiefs and not enough Indians?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I sometimes make
Too
fun
many
of.
cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, too many cooks.
So how about your ministerial staff? Supportive?
Very,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
It's probably I've not always done church work in my life, but it's the best staff situation that I've walked into.
okay. Okay, we need to hear from a bunch of you on this, so speak to us.
In response or our own?
No, your own thing.
Redefining. I'm redefining our youth choir situation.
You're redefining
Well-
it, or the church is?
Because we let go of the old-fashioned children minister, youth minister, model, and embraced we're a church that's steeped in tradition and many years of history, so it was a big change. We had a sabbatical, our children's minister then became a family minister, and what she is now is overseer of from pre-K, in Euro to high school senior, and is exceptional, wonderful. But a part of, and she like me and several others are stallions, like just, we're out the gate, she's out the gate, she's going. And I think a little bit of what happened with that is, where is the choir fitting in with that? And there were a couple of rubs, just programmatically with trips and things. And so, but this year was the first year where I think we're finally she's realizing I'm inserting myself a bit more into what is, the family ministry, she has a team, a cadre of like 6 people. And so I do not. I am a lone ranger out there with my organist and my, so it's a part, what this year, past 2 years have been is a redefining of how we as a staff and how we plan for budget and envision not just the youth ministry, but how specifically the youth music ministry.
Good.
As an example, is her high school. So she is overseer, but she has a high school resident person that now the high school kids, that's their guy. And so he's the one that's been going to the concerts and doing a lot of the stuff and being the present hands and feet, which I'm happy to go as well, but I've not always done as much of that because I'm overseeing the entire music ministry, not just the youth. So it's just finding out on trips, who's doing what, and who's running point, and who's, that's been taking a couple of years of redefining.
Sure.
So looking at getting a bit more hands-on for me this year.
So not the rest of you input. I'd like to hear from every one of you around this table if you're willing to talk to us about it.
My church had a long history of really strong youth choirs, and it fizzled about 7 years ago, and then I came 5 years ago. And think the congregation and to some degree the pastor are pro student choir, youth choir, but the youth minister and some other staff members are not. And there's so many huge things that our church is dealing with right now, relocation being one of them, that they've not been interested in, having a battle about that. So I budgeted for it every year. I've presented a plan every year, and every year it's just been a very, very nice, it's not the time for this right now. So that's kind of where we are.
So we're kicking the can down the road
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
Okay. And sometimes you kind of have to do that. I get that.
Well, I'm-
Multiple church staff, the big church staff, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but I'm prepared to walk in the door with my plane again next year, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Somebody else?
Wilshire and Dallas, we have a very strong tradition that goes back many decades,
Uh-huh.
still going very strong. I inherited the youth choir 5 years ago from the minister of music.
Right.
Who said, I need to do some other things, and why don't you take this?
Right.
Which I was glad to do it and have really enjoyed it. But I'm always trying to think of ways, I guess, to be innovative, to find ways to make us more accessible to the children, to the youth, to the students. So traditionally, we've met 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, which is quite a big commitment, especially when you just have Mavs games and Dallas Cowboy games coming up. And I'll be texting, hey, where are you today? Oh, well, I just got Mavs tickets. Or one of my friends, this is North Dallas, so they flew literally on our trip. He had to leave a day early Saturday to fly from Birmingham to Los Angeles to be on Shark Tank. I said, so you're not going to be at the home concert? No, I'll be there. He flew back that night to Dallas, all in a day, and I thought, well, that's just a different world for me. But so one thing we're doing this year is we're actually going to move our rehearsal up right to after Sunday service and feed them a snack lunch on the church's nickel, $5. So chicken nuggets and fries and a cookie. They have to eat in 23 and a half minutes is the goal, and we're now going to have a 50-minute rehearsal. I'll bleed over that
That's what we
consistently,
do.
I know that.
That's our rule, that's our deal.
Yeah.
So-
I'm gonna get me one of those like little chess clocks. When they talk, I get 50 minutes.
Yeah, right.
That'll be the rule.
You got it.
Then we have a little audition ensemble that
Okay.
happens after that. So a lot of support, a lot of kind of cross-curriculum working, if you will, with other departments of the church. So it's a great situation, and so I hope it continues that way, and I think it will.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Somebody else, speak to us.
Our church has a great adult choir, had a youth choir before, but it went away. And
How long has that been?
probably 7 or 8 years, probably similar, I guess, with you all. But they have a sweet group of kiddos that lead a praise team just for their Wednesday night services. So I've been stepping in and kind of leading that for them on Wednesday nights, but slowly implementing some vocal techniques, some harmonies, how to do things, and have kind of gotten them on board. And we are starting youth choir again this coming up year. But we are going to be reaching into the community, so we're advertising it as our Irmo community choir. But we have an avenue with our kids to hopefully be an outreach to the community.
And tell us where you're located.
I'm at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay, good. You're a long way from home.
Yes, I am. We drove here
Oh, good for you.
with 5 youth.
Yeah.
We're at worship lab. Those same kids that we've been
Good.
trying to.
Great.
Yeah, we
Good deal.
took a couple nights in Memphis.
Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left, and I'd sure like to hear a couple more of these, if we could.
I'm blessed where I am. The support is tremendous for youth choir. Financially, the church supports it, fundraisers, the whole 9 yards. But even better than that, on rehearsal every week, there's an army of parents that are there, doing all kinds of things behind the scenes and supporting the kids, so it transfers to them that they see it's important.
Now, is this something you set up, or was that set up when you arrived?
I've been there 16 years, And the youth choir started, our church is only 23 years old, started a year before I came with a few kids. So I've kind of built that
Right.
through the years. I wish I could get the youth department to see how they could piggyback on to the youth choir, because we have 2 or 3 times as many in youth choir as they do in youth.
Is it would you call it a community choir? Or there, a better question, are there a number of students who sing in choir who that's their only connection to the church?
Absolutely, yeah.
Then I
And
consider that a community choir.
I guess by that definition it is, and the students recruit for me, I don't do that anymore. They invite their friends, and it's grown every year. I mean, we have over 100 singers in a fairly small town, and that's because of the support underneath that. You know, there's a lot
Now
of
tell us where you are.
College Station.
Okay. Great. Okay, anybody else? Tell us about your situation. Okay, now, this is gonna get tricky in here. What I need us to do right now is I need us to think about the last session, those of you who were here. And just for those of you who were not, let me mention, what we did is we made a list of things that students need in order to grow up. Some of those things have changed in the last 20 years. Some of those things are essentially the same as they were 100 years ago. But you can imagine what that list is. We can recreate the list as we go if we need to. But I think you would figure out what things are on that list. So from this, we need to look forward or look over to the side here of the church where we are. And I want you just to look at, is the church supportive of the needs that kids have today and our efforts to reach them? Because probably it is, and let me ask you, if I had been in a session, let's see, 16 years ago, and this question had been asked, I would raise my hand, and that is this. Are any of you in situations where you feel like that the fellow staff members, colleagues, maybe even some members of the church are actually gunning for the youth choir and trying to sort of take it down? Anybody? Anybody?
Gunning meaning to take down?
Take down.
No.
Okay. I would have raised my hand 16 years ago.
Not so much like literally,
Okay.
but the thing that kind of kills me is that there's an expectation that's not spoken, that those students are going to love praise band, and they are not. That is the contemporary service is for them. We expect them to go to that service.
Okay.
And that, in that way, and they don't mean it to
Right.
be
It's a little more
detrimental,
subtle.
but that is like when you, and if you go, and I've got a small group, and if you go to a small group, you're just different.
Mhm.
You have different, they're not looked at in the same way that the other students are, if that makes any sense.
It makes good sense. Okay, so here's the list of things that we put together from last session that teenagers really need, or we believe that they need to see and get this. Here's the church over here. And my question is not, is the church friendly toward these needs, but are they being met? And some of it is going to be sort of dependent on which day you're looking at, or maybe which year. even if the church is all positive and all plus about the youth choir ministry, that doesn't guarantee that these needs are gonna be met, does it?
No. Yeah, right.
Because the church, as wonderful as it is, you know, we talked about the church earlier, and doesn't the church have some significant blind spots? I mean, I know I personally have some pretty significant blind spots. And I think maybe the church does too. So this tricky question that I need to ask you, is the support that you are getting adequate to meet your dream that we talked about? You see how it's all kind of coming together? Remember your dream? And remember, you can't have a dream that you can't envision. You don't get it. I don't get to have a dream if I can't envision it. It's never gonna become a reality if I can't envision it. It's not just gonna drop out of the sky and go, oh, here's what you need to do. So I have to envision it. So these are complicated questions. And here again, I don't know that we're going to come to a conclusion and an answer about that. But now, as we move towards the third session in just a little bit, I will kind of do a spoiler for you. I discovered that the lovely, generous, wonderful church that I am in was not providing adequate support. They're lovely, they're generous, they're everything good. But my dream for what I believed could happen and what the church was able and willing to give didn't match. It didn't work.
And does that change, or are you still in that paradigm now? That's why you've maintained it the way you have.
San Antonio Youth Chorale became a community choir as a result of that realization. I pulled it out from under the church.
And was that because of financial support, theological support, ideology, you know, what were your reasons?
1 and 3.
Financial and ideological?
In my case.
Well, you know, I'll jump in the pool now in the deep
Good,
end. Because from the okay, so I'm serving a Methodist church. I have a professional singing life. And when I went into this church, because I got called in at the last minute, it was a situation where, and that's a whole nother story. It was a situation where it was sort of like the rubber hit the road. And this church, they needed me and I needed them. And we've had a wonderful year. Now the Methodist Church, the global, not that you were saying you didn't want to work on that, now they've made this decision about homosexuality. Our staff and predominantly our congregation, as I now know it, you know, I know there's some spoilers out there, we want to we are a welcoming congregation.
Okay.
2 kids, it is clear to me that 2 kids, and I'm the director of music ministries and organist. I have a person who is working with me in the children's ministry aspect. She is a felon. She and this church has welcomed her in. I only say this because I won't tell you why she's a felon, but this church has extended this hand to her, and now because she's very talented and she's made some mistakes. And so under my supervision, I am working with her, which is also a very creative relationship. But we know we have 2 kids that are clearly gay. And we are dealing with what our major church, or I don't even know what you would call that.
Well, yeah, the denomination.
The denomination, and this is one issue.
Yes,
Okay?
Yes.
How we're going to deal with that.
right.
And so at a very emotional staff meeting one day, and we have a terrific staff. I get emotional now thinking about it. I said, I will never reject anybody that walks in this church on the grounds of their sexuality. And I'm gonna tell you that straight up. And I will stand by the organ, I will stand in the pulpit. This is how I feel. God has called me. Jesus would never reject these people. And that we all got behind this. So now one of the things that we're facing is how do we open ourselves up? Because there was one family who went to the pastor who privately expressed to us that they were having to leave the Methodist church because their son had been gay and he died of AIDS. And now they are dealing with another person in their family who has come out gay. So they're choosing to leave this situation. And so now it creates this paradigm for us of how are we going to deal with this? And when I made that statement of I am never going to reject these people, then it went to the larger level of, I think what you're talking about from the standpoint of community choir, that how do we reach our children around us that are poverty stricken? You know, I am so in love with the idea of what Gustavo Dudamel did down in South America, where he got through, now it's a socialized situation, but he got instruments in all the hands of those poor children and created the Simon Bolivar Orchestra. Sistema. And so, you know, what we're grappling with and bringing all those things up is how do we provide this environment when we know that we're going to deal with maybe not issues in our present congregation, but on the higher end.
Right.
So our pastor has said, we are going to go forward and we'll cross those bridges when we need to.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
he has stood in the pulpit, he's preached from
Right.
that point. So when I say that, you know, we're supporting, I think rather than have a box on that side and a circle on that side, the way I envision that is we have a box and we have a circle.
Okay.
And there's a part of it right now that's combined, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the outer edges, which we
Right.
don't know where in the hell we are.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
There's-
Yeah.
And it's the issues right in here that are the.
Yeah, and they're not, you know, our little congregation, well, it's not necessarily little, and I will also say that in the past year, our attendance has gone up 10%. So we're also really excited about that. But it's like, how do we deal, we know who
Right.
we want to be,
Right.
but how do we deal with this influence
Right.
coming at us from
And
this
see,
point?
so these are the questions that we have got to grapple with. We can't run and hide from those questions.
No.
We've got to grapple with it. And if we fail to grapple with it, we will continue to lose teenagers. One thing that I learned a number of years ago from experience is I'm going to use these two pieces of paper to describe. And it's a little bit like this circle with the square in it. Let's let this piece of paper represent God. It's terrible to have God reduced to that, right? But just for our concept. And let's have this piece of paper represent the church. I was at First Baptist Church in San Antonio. I went there as minister of music at age 25, way too young. And when I went there, I thought they were the same thing. God and the church. I really did. I had gone through seminary, and I think I knew upstairs that God and the church were not exactly the same. But somehow that had not made it to my heart yet. But now, turning 65 on my next birthday, and having been in this 50 years, I believe it looks a lot like this. There is some overlap where God and the church are aligned. And there's some space over here that what the church doesn't have much to do with God at all. And there's a whole lot of space over here where God is operating outside the walls of the church. Now, that's just my theory. There's nothing gospel about that. That's not written in red letter in the Bible, but that's the way I see it now, is with that significant overlap. And it's like some churches are probably about like this. But I think I've been in some churches that were like this. There was very little overlap. And I'm referring to my experience at First Baptist San Antonio in the late 80s. I looked at that situation and I said, I don't see God in this setup. I see politics. I see a lot of rough talking. I see a lot of heat, but not much light. I see a lot of, fire, but not much warmth. So we all go through those journeys, right? I hope you never get to that place where you feel like it's really thin on the common area. But if you do, take heart to know that God still has work for us to do. So in each of your situations, and my situation, I have to constantly, like I tell the kids when they're singing, there is not one moment, not one nanosecond of sound that you are making where you can stop listening. And I used James Mack, the violin player, yesterday as an example. If he ever stops listening for 1 second, it's disaster, And there's nothing of a violin and oboes are a lot alike. There's nothing better than a good one, and there's nothing worse than a bad one, right? And that's kind of the way we are, and I don't know how you draw all these things for yourself and how you see all this. Do your own model. Figure out your own and talk with people or whatever. But I'm telling you, the business as usual model is getting us nowhere fast. And it may even be working to some extent where we are. But the day is coming when we've got to have more on the ball than just, we've always done it like that. Okay, so we need to ask the question. Reconcile your dream with what the church that you're serving with is able to support and able and willing to undergird and get behind. And if you can make up for that difference somehow by tweaking some stuff, great, that's good. If you can't, then there may be some new decisions to make for you. I'm not suggesting you leave, but I'm suggesting that if you want to hold on to this dream of student choir being what it can be, you may have to step outside of the church to do that. It may happen at some point. Maybe not this year, maybe not 5 years from now, but if you're young, I would predict to you that you're the mass majority will have to look at that. Or maybe you just look at it and just turn it loose, let it go, and decide that's not what God has for you to do anyway. You know, I didn't used to say these things because I was like, boy, we need everybody directing student choirs who will do it. But no, we don't need people who don't have the fire in their bones for it. The students don't need that. So these are hard questions, right? I mean, this is hard stuff, and especially if you're serving in a place that's generally very good. And I'm gonna just cut right to it. Can you do it in 50 minutes?
You can't.
You can't?
Sorry.
You can't? Is that what you just said?
I can't. I can't do it in 50 minutes.
I've been beating my head the
Yeah.
past however many years, past 2 or 3 years. Because you leave worship, they've been sitting in Sunday school all day, they've sat through a worship service. They've got 20 some odd minutes, we have a soft serve ice cream machine.
Right.
And trying to get them upstairs to the choir room, which is, I have my support, I have my parents, I have all the things you mentioned, I have. It's there. And to get them focused, even Randy Edwards and his, it would be a task to get them focused. And then in the past few years I lost and graduated some real leaders. I've had to rebuild, start over, and to take repertoire to produce for offering out or preparing for mission or going somewhere or doing something, and to try to accomplish that. Actually, I have 45 minutes because I've got to send them to bells.
Oh, that's the difference. If it were 50, it'd be
Yeah,
fine.
maybe if it were 50. But I will say there is so much that needs to happen. And if we had a culture, if those were students at a university getting a degree or a credit, or if they were paying to be there or auditioning, then I could be really effective in that short amount of time. But these are volunteer kids. It's not the same group every week, and they're coming from lunch, sugared up. And it's a thing.
Okay, so now let me add here real quickly. The object of this game is not at all to shoot down any of the plans that you've made. That's not it. The object of this game is to look ahead farther, to say, if it doesn't work for you, that doesn't have to be the end of the line. That doesn't have to be the end. And this is really this is really tipping off the third hour of what we're talking about. But how the San Antonio Youth Choir began, Youth Chorale began, was in 2013, we decided to start this thing. It was under the ministry of the church. We started it, we got it going. But YouthCUE was always in charge of it, and we sat our team down and we said, we refuse to fail. It was a team of 7 of us at the time on staff, and we said, we will fail, but we're gonna keep coming back, and we are going to stay with it until we find a system that works. And I'll just tell you, as I was telling them, I am committed to it, and I'm like a dog with an old shoe, and I invite you to stay with us, and let's make this thing work. And we didn't turn a corner, we didn't get a critical mass until 2016. So for 3 years, we made mistakes, we did all kinds of foolish things, trying to hit that moving target of the kids. And so all I'm saying to you is the best laid plans, I mean, you may find that your thing just works splendidly because it all has to do with the chemicals that are in a particular place. It'll spark, and it may not work here, but it'll work beautifully over there, you know? And so keep going. Just
The
keep
Dallas
going.
commuters will love the not having to come back
They pretty much think I walk on water now.
I'm serious, like you will
Well, I
ride
think you
that
do,
way
really.
a
Yes.
long,
Well,
long time.
one thing that's really helped in making this decision is, I'm one of those people that, planning rehearsals, when we do our tour every summer, every piece we take on tour is something we sung through the year. And we started working on several of those pieces the very first rehearsal.
Sure, of course.
And so, I found myself consistently being finished before the hour was up.
Good.
And that was on the heels of being told I couldn't do it
So
in
you've
an
already
hour.
been doing 50 minutes, Jeff.
Yeah.
You've already been doing it.
I've already been doing 50 minutes. So that's been really
Good for you.
I wouldn't do it
That's
unless,
wonderful.
unless I was,
I can
Had
get
that
that done in 30 minutes.
I did a funeral in 30 minutes once, and it was a double funeral. It was a husband and wife.
Well, that's
And
out.
she had told me 30 minutes. It was Tina's parents, is who it was. It
Wow.
was Tina McCarthy's parents. It was like 30 minutes, no more. We did it in 29 and 30 seconds. So yeah, and you know, it's interesting. I seldom keep my students all the way to the end of the rehearsal. Makes them feel so good to get out a little early, you know? It's like getting a piece of candy or something. So as you look at your church situation, and as you evaluate, and as things change, keep asking the question, is there proper provision for meeting this dream that is in my head? Because I believe the dream is a God-given thing. I think that's not something that you just thought up. I think it's something that is divine, really. So let's think about it a little more. It's going to get a little more uncomfortable here. But what might be missing in your church's support of your student choir program? What could be missing? We'll just think about that for a little bit. So I have another question. What is it that is heavy baggage? Having your youth choir under the umbrella of your church, what is excessively heavy baggage? One of the reasons we're asking these tough questions is you may be able to get this stuff changed. You may be able to get it fixed if you can point it out and communicate it and have the conversations with the right people.
I struggle with midtown-ness.
Okay?
I don't see the youth, so that's it. If I'm not careful, I may only have them for 45, 50 minutes, and I'm really, and some of that's sort of browbeating to get notes learned and trying to focus the sugar. And, you know, before I know it, I've lost any and every opportunity to be with, which I think is, for who I am and my personality, is part of that's my X factor. And that sometimes the circumstance of South Maine, where they're coming from all over Houston, and you know, we're not a suburban church, so they don't come in knowing all the boys from the football team and the girls from the, you know, they don't, we represent, it's like 100 and some odd, I mean, it's crazy how many districts and high schools we represent. And so it's hard to get that eclectic group, you know, synthesized, and then for me to have any kind of quality, you know, it's tough. And so then, well, it's outside of the choir rehearsal, but then it's hard to, you know, to find that, you know, Friday night, Thursday night, some event. So that's one of the things I struggle with, that I feel like it's a burden I carry, the midtownness.
Is there anything systemic in your church?
In the church.
That, and location is
Oh.
Yeah, location is-
given, but is there anything systemic within the system that works against you putting together a great program. And I'm not necessarily asking for responses here, but I think you need to know what that is if there are systemic things. One of the systemic things that was sort of eating my lunch at this supportive and generous church was the incredible hoops I was having to jump financially for the small amount of support that we were receiving. I was having to jump tremendous hoops for that.
In what ways?
Reporting to a degree that the person who was demanding that was a forensic CPA. You know what a forensic CPA is? It's
Doesn't
one
sound
who
good.
goes through, stuff and looks for the smallest, abnormality, or it's to find criminals is largely what it's for. And that's pretty much how we were treated on that one issue. Not anything else, just on that one issue. Very interesting. Okay. You're doing good. So I'd like for you to do something here. All right. If you have not gone to youthque.org, I would really appreciate your doing that and signing up for our free newsletter. This free God image here and this free God church. We did a newsletter for 22 years. We took a sabbatical to regroup, and this is the first newsletter back, and it's free. Also, we're starting up a podcast in September, but you can't get it if you don't sign up for it. It's free through
What
December.
can you tell us about the podcast? It's for choir director, youth choir
For choir
directors?
directors, it's for choir directors, it's for kids. Kids are gonna be on the podcast. It is going to be for parents. It's gonna be for everybody to learn more about what it takes. And it will come out every 2 weeks. So, yeah. So go to the website, and as soon as you go to the website, a little blue tab will come up, and we need you to fill out that information and send it in, and we've got it. Okay. So, we've got about 5 or 6 more minutes here before we do a break. I find this discussion difficult, stressful, because it would be a lot easier just to say, wow, everything is really good. Everything is all right. Everything is wonderful. And it may be, but we still need to pull our heads up out of the sand and realize that although what we are doing for our little group may be working beautifully, there's a whole world that is just beyond the walls of the church that we could reach if we can figure out how to do it. I hope it can be done within the walls or the confines of the church. If it's not, there are other ways to get it done. And it's also important to say, as we end here, and then we'll come back and do the next session. It's also important to say that the San Antonio Youth Chorale, for instance, didn't just abandon the church. We didn't just walk off and say, we're done with you. We are still very connected to the church. The church still benefits from our ministry, and we still benefit from the church, but it is divorced legally from the church.
How is it that you get your funding? It's not from the church budget.
Not.
Participant fees, what do you do?
We get our funding from YouthCUE, mainly. It's under that umbrella, and YouthCUE is constantly in the process of raising, funding. But frankly, we want to be there. If you get to the point in your community where you have this burning dream and this desire to provide something, we want to be at YouthCUE a resource for you to provide you an umbrella where you can do some of this. And we can provide some of those services that if you were just to go out and start a community choir on your own, it is a lot of work, let me tell you. It is a lot of work, and it takes a lot of money to do it. And part of our ministry, I believe, is that for the next 30 years, probably long after I'm gone, is that YouthCUE will probably have San Antonio Youth Chorale type programs all over the United States. Because I'm telling you, you may be in a good place, and I'm delighted if you are. There are places dotted across the United States that have great programs. One of the things we said at YouthCUE about 25 years ago in the newsletter, we wrote a series on all of this, and there were at that time, 25 years ago, there were approximately 5 times as many youth choirs in our country as there are now. So YouthCUE did not stem the tide. We failed in that regard. Although we never had it in our head that we were going to be able to say that. Because there are too many factors outside of our purview to be able to do that. But we did always want to be there as an alternative when things went south in the local church and everything went praise band. And, that we're just seeing more and more of that. And so what happens is that, and one of the things you saw in my class description is the thing that just does not square is to say that the youth choir ministry for church is irrelevant. When we are seeing high school programs across the country flourish with record numbers of teenagers singing in high school choruses. And frankly, singing at a level many times that is beyond some of the college choirs that some of us grew up in. I mean, they're good. Reagan High School, San Antonio, about 2 miles from our church and 2 miles from Sacy, just went to Italy and just won the Da Vinci choral, whatever, a world, prize. That happened just 3 or 4 days ago. Kids just got back to San Antonio. And for us to say, oh, it's not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only relevant, it is super relevant.
And is that a public school or a private school, right?
It's a public school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know all states don't have wonderful public school music, but Texas does. Tennessee does.
Yeah.
Kansas City,
Moving from North
Kansas
Carolina
does.
to Texas was an eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
South Carolina has good.
Yeah.
Say what you
Well,
just said.
if you want an eye opener, Carrie, my eye opener was going from San Antonio to Shreveport, Louisiana, where there is not one in the state of Louisiana, there is not one excellent choral program in a school. And then back to Texas, where we've got 32 schools, high schools in San Antonio that just produce top level stuff.
In bad areas, like there are public schools
Oh,
in
yeah.
Houston that are in some really nasty
Yeah.
situations that win competition prizes are highest with the professional chamber group in the city of sponsors. And I listen to the repertoire, I'm like, that was my college chamber choir.
That's exactly right.
This is
That's exactly
down
right.
the street in the fourth ward,
That is
you
right.
know.
And this is the world that we're
And
waking.
why, and so why do you believe, as Texans, and why are you saying that exists?
Why am I saying why?
Why is that existing then? Why are you saying that that's coming out of these impoverished areas? Is it leadership? Is it?
There's a cultural and music education culture that's been here for just decades in
Yeah.
Texas. And it stems, I think, my outside of the state of Texas philosophy is it stems from football and marching band support for big football programs. That then an instrumental band program at a university, or, you know, well, then the choral folks are saying, well, we chop liver, so no, and they get a piece of the pie, and next thing you know, you've got this flourishing music education.
Yeah,
I don't know, you
TMEA,
tell me.
TMEA, Texas Music Educators Association, is the largest music convention in the world.
It's extraordinary.
I mean, and it happens in San Antonio, just down the street from us every year. And you know, you've got 10,000 kids come in, and they're singing in every kind of state choir that you can imagine, and at these levels that are just as intensely competitive. I mean, Baylor has what they call an all-state camp, where they open it up, and the all-state camp fills in an hour, 400 kids. And nobody can get in if you're not sitting there in front of your computer when it opens. So, yeah, you've got that kind of impetus going on, but it's just amazing to me to say that the choral idiom is irrelevant in churches. I mean, it's like what has happened is the church has become irrelevant in the process. And so, we got big questions to look at in the coming years, really big questions. Each congregation is gonna have to face their own ministry things, and these things that are outside the box of what we normally, how are we gonna deal with those? Are we gonna put up more rules? Are we gonna proceed with compassion and love? It's gonna be a tough thing, and it's going to affect all of the art. Now, we're fixing to break from this. It was designed that session 3 and session 2 was going to be the hard one. If you're feeling a little down, a little depressed now, that's okay. We'll bring you out of it in just a little bit. So start off by going and getting a Dr. Pepper.
There you
Middle
go.
act of a 3-act play.
That's right.
Awesome.